Hi, everyone. Welcome to Tableau Buddy TUG. Thank you so much for joining. All of you, some of them really joined early. And that's really great to see your commitment. And this TUG is all about giving voice to our community rising stars. Though, yeah, I can say they are rising stars, but we have Ojo as well as Tabitha, who recently became Tableau ambassadors as well. So kudos to them for that and congratulations. So, if we talk about more about our tug, the whole thing started as by the name Tableau Buddy in 2021. We started with one-to-one mentorships. Then we started Tableau Buddy Tug, thanks to Wani, because we started as something just an a YouTube channel, but then we finally formed a user group out of that, and our mission has been to provide opportunities to new and upcoming voices. That's our whole motive and mission. And then we also launched Tableau Buddy Sandbox in the Tableau Buddy family. So that's an exciting initiative that we have launched, and the competition is still running. The last day to enter is 30th September, and after that, the judges will finally score everyone, and we'll get the 18 learners who will go on a 4 month learning journey with us. And there are so many exciting, like they will get licenses, e-learning, as well as one-to-one mentorship with mostly Tableau visionaries and ambassadors. So that's a really exciting opportunity that we have come up with, and there's a lot of work I have to do still to finally make it work. So I'm really excited about that. And yes, the only Tableau user group for the people, because this user group we started so that speakers could get a chance to just be themselves. It doesn't have to be polished. Most of our speakers has been first time speakers as well, about more than 90%. And one of the important thing is whether you're a speaker or you're attending, just enjoy life and Tableau. That's the whole motive and mission behind it. And today, first I would like to introduce our team. We have Avinash, who's not here right now. He has won 2 times VOTD. He is a tremendous TUG speaker, and he works at Optum Ireland as a senior data analyst. Then we have Ansula. She has her own really great YouTube channel and goes by the name Techie Anshi. She's a 3 times social ambassador and a data visualization expert at Zoom. Then we have Vani. Vani, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi guys. So my name is Vani, and I've been a 3 times Tableau social ambassador, and I'm currently working as a data visualization engineer at Expedia Group. Besides that, I really love teaching Tableau from time to time to a lot of people. So this is a perfect platform to teach and to learn. Looking forward to you guys speaking.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vani. And finally, this is me, Prasan. A lot of people have telling me by the name of like calling me by the name of Tableau Buddy. So that's insane as well. I'm a 2 times Tableau visionary, 3 times social ambassador, and I'm currently working as a senior BI engineer at Emirates NBD. That's an exciting opportunity as well as lots of exciting people working together. So it's really going well. And before we start off, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel or you haven't joined our WhatsApp group, please do. I'll hold on here for 1 minute. In the meantime, if Ojo wants to make a joke, I won't say anything. Okay. So we'll just wait here. If you want to scan, we'll also send you the link if, let's say, we move on and later you want to join. And all the events, everything that's happening, the recordings will be on our YouTube channel, and any of the events or anything related to our Tableau Buddy will be there on the WhatsApp group. Okay, so moving on, we have agenda. We already went through the welcome and introduction. Then we have multiple ways of sorting using parameter actions by Ojoswi Basu. And then we have document like a pro, your ultimate guide by Tabitha. And the agenda says here that the Q&A is at the end, but it's not like that. You have a Q&A section. You can always put in all your questions over there, and once our speaker complete the session, they'll answer all of your questions. So be frank and be open to have these conversations, and let the chat box busy. I think that's the most important rule. I like it. People are saying hello where they are from, so it's kind of interesting. Okay, so moving on to our first speaker. So we have Ojoswi Basu, who is a fractional CDO and founder at Data to Visuals. He's a Tableau social ambassador for this current year and also a Toronto TUG user group leader. And today he's going to not just tell you about parameter actions, but he's going to have a show and tell hands-on session on how you can build and actually leverage this functionality in Tableau. So that's an interesting one. If you want to have your notebook put up or you want to make notes, that's fine. But we'll have the recording, so don't worry about that. Okay. So now I'll put my hands off and I'll hand it over to Ojo.
Thank you, Prasann. I'm just setting up the share. I have one dad joke, but I'll save it to the end.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone, for making time from your busy Friday evening, afternoon, morning, from wherever you're joining. Thank you. This means a lot. My show and tell today is going to be a couple of use cases in parameters. I'll take you through them. And then an easy one as to how we can build along. If you've followed me, I've started recently recording some build along sessions as to how you could get started and make your own Tableau using the Superstore dataset. It's all on my YouTube channel. But let's look at the hero of the show, that is parameter actions. If I were to click on technology here, watch how the map shows now a slice in the pie. If I were to click furniture, it changes. That's one of the use cases. There is another one. This is a map by region. If I were to click on the West region, and this will take me to the Tableau public page. If I do click on the West region, it explodes into the states of that region. Central explodes and shows the dollar value. South, like so. Similarly, technology expands into regions, furniture. All of this can be possible using parameter actions. There are a few other examples, and I have curated them for you here. There is a sort order. I don't know why it's not working. Recently, I shared a similar parameter actions use case in the Bhubaneswar TUG. And if you were to, it will take you to the Tableau public page. Click on any of these metrics. The chart, which is over time, will show you these metrics: profit, average discount, sales, dynamic in nature. And then the granularity can be changed to show me by year, quarter, month. Another good example of using parameter actions behind the scene.
Ojo, sorry, Vani. The clicks, we can see the changes, I think. Is it happening at your end?
What do you mean?
Like when you're interacting with the charts, we can't see the changes.
You cannot.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I think there are two screens.
Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah.
Let me do something. Thank you for letting me know, Prasann.
Totally fine. It happens with multiple screens. You're clicking here, it goes somewhere else.
Yes. I've proven myself to be a noob today.
That's fine.
Okay. Is it better now?
Yes, we can see a screen. You can just interact and see if it works, and then we are good to go.
Okay. How about now?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yes, we can see
Good.
it.
All right. So when I click on any of the measures, it dynamically changes. When I click on any of the granularity by date, it changes. Behind the scenes, it's all parameter actions. Let's look at the sort order example. Maybe we can revisit this one quickly. This is another example of parameter actions where if I were to click on any of the provinces, any of the regions, the states of that region would expand, like so. In central, they would expand. Similar experience with the categories into subcategories, they break out into regions. Furniture. So this is another example where I used parameter actions behind the scene. We saw the proportion brushing, right? So here is another example where I click on the sales by category and my map changes to show the proportion of the sales by state. All right. The one example that I want to share today is this one. It's a stacked bar chart broken down by year quarter, and each of the bars are a percent of total by the sales. If I were to click on the orange segment here, the problem with such kind of a stacked bar chart is it's easy to tell how the red section, which is home office in this case, goes over time. You can see the contour, but it's very difficult to see the contour for the orange and especially the blue because they are stacked on top of each other. To counter this, if I were to click on orange, now my chart, you can tell the trend of orange, which is corporate, over the quarters. And it's a nifty skill to have. And this one is something which I found very impactful, yet very easy to build. But before we get sucked in, like Prasanna introduced me, I recently got the green light to start our own Tableau user group, a new one. It's yet to kickstart. So follow me on LinkedIn as I share those details. I can promise it's going to be an amazing one. And thank you for all the love and support. This is my first time as a Tableau ambassador. I really am a big fan of Prasanna and this group here. This TUG, Buddy Talks TUG, it does what wasn't there when I started my career 12 years back. It gives an opportunity for those who are learning and have built something amazing in Tableau to showcase their skills. So a round of applause to Prasanna and his leadership team here. I feel the sandbox, the initiative that Prasanna is rolling out is awesome and amazing, that you get to learn from the best and be mentored. So without any further ado, let's get our hands into building something like so. Let me start a new Tableau instance and build this from scratch. Connect to data, sample superstore. Then definitely I would need the sales dollars. Let me put sales on here. I will need the order date. I'm going to right click and drag it. That will give me a bunch of options. Let me pick the continuous quarter, change it back to a bar. Let me throw in the segment to color. So now each segment is showing up here. And now I'm going to create a parameter so that I can interact with it. Create parameter. Let's name it segment parameter. It's a string type. I can call it X for now. It doesn't matter because we are going to make it dynamic. I'm just showing the parameter here and the color legend so that I can see. Now, the first thing I want to do is I want to create an action, add action, change parameter action. Let's call it update segment Sheet 1, segment parameter, source field is segment. So my source sheet is sheet 1. My parameter is the newly created string segment parameter. And my source field, the one which is going to control the values, is segment. And all of this is going to happen when I select on something. And when I clear the selection, I'm choosing to keep the current value. So with this setting, set OK and OK. So let's test it out. If I were to click on the blue, which is consumer, the value on the segment parameter will change. So watch. OK, that's working. Click on corporate, the orange, it's changing. And home office, it's changing. Great. Now, to make it work, parameters have to have a calculated field. So let's do like so. Segment parameter, right click on it. Didn't work. Create calculated field, segment picker. And I'm going to call this segment parameter, and I'm going to say equal to my segment. It's going to evaluate to a Boolean value. Now that I have a segment picker here, all I need to do is go into my segment and then sort it using that calculated field. So sort by field, segment picker, and my. Okay, now that my parameter is hooked to a calculated field, which is driving the selection, driving the sorting using color, let's now click on consume and test it out. Fantastic. Red should be at the bottom. Great. Now the problem with Tableau is, and it's not really a problem, it's a feature, is it holds the state of anything that I selected. That way it's hard for me. So I have to click it away and now I can see the sorting. So to get around this feature of Tableau, there is a nifty, let me hide everything that I'm not using. There's a nifty little tip and I can try and squeeze it in, hide all unused fields, create calculated field. Let me call it false. It's a dummy field and I'm hard coding it to be a false Boolean type. Let me bring that into the detail. Worksheet, action, highlight action. Just leave it highlight. When I select on sheet 1 and I'm selecting the field false, that way, now when I select something, it doesn't keep highlighting that value. And now you are having a working solution that when you click on something, it becomes the lower stacked bar so that you can visually compare. And with that, I'm ready to take questions.
I think,
Thank you so much, Ojo.
yeah.
Uh, I think parameter actions are always exciting because once you start loving parameter, are always like when you're starting to learn Tableau, parameter is something that excites everyone. Like it's like a remote. I see it as a remote. Like you just press the buttons and things changes. But once you get into the parameter action part, now that's a whole different domain, and it's exciting actually about how you can play around, have a better UI, like you can just build a great story as well as have a great user interaction associated with it. Thank you so much for choosing this topic, also letting us go through so many different examples that you have tried out. I think if you can share those workbook links in the chat box, those who want to look at those different use cases, that will be great for us to go and download and work into it.
Yes,
So
absolutely, Susan. I will get that done. Yeah.
thank you. And we have a question from Tom. So do you normally create your viz and then add on the parameters and actions? What's your
Usually,
take on that? Hmm.
yeah, let me give a roundabout answer to that. Usually, once we receive any data set, we have to adopt any persona, like who is going to be the audience, and then what is the story that audience cares for, and then becomes the journey of cleaning, preparing the data, then sketching out which are the visuals that are interesting and aligned to that persona and story. So eventually, when we build a couple of vizzes, data discover, and then stitch it all together, parameter actions come in at that stage to improve the user experience, user interactivity, and things like that.
I think it's a great feature from Tableau because otherwise you will always have those radio buttons to play with. But otherwise, using parameter actions, you cannot go with just the drop down or the radio buttons, but you can make it more intuitive so that because nowadays, if you see the dashboards, I really don't use dashboard as a word because it's I think it's outdated. Dashboard for me is like the car dashboard. So it's more like a data product or a tool altogether, an analytical tool that we are offering as a solution. So building it as a whole software, I think that's the road forward, and parameter actions truly help in that way. So thank you so much for taking that topic.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. And okay, so we won't waste any more time, and let me just share my screen. Okay, so now next we have Tabitha, who is a Tableau and Alteryx consultant at the Information Lab US. So Information Lab is now everywhere, and she is with the US division, like the famous Information Lab, and she is a Tableau social ambassador. It was recently announced, and it feels great to have her in the group because she is kind of really posting great stuff on LinkedIn, like how you curate content as well as put that up as a whole document, different ideas out there. I really admire that. So thank you so much for doing that. And today she is going to talk about document like a pro, your ultimate guide. Now documentation is always important and we always do this at our work. So she'll guide us through the process of how she documents a workbook so that anyone who accesses it later or let's say inherits it can easily follow along. And it's true, like it adds little extra time, but it's always like your future self or maybe your juniors, they will really thank you for that because we like all of us have always inherited a dashboard that takes us through a limbo of finding calculations and inside like going that. So this really helps. So thank you so much, Tabitha, for bringing this topic to us, and over to you now.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. Like you said, this is actually my first tug. So if I'm stumbling through, please bear with me, everyone. I'm also working on a new setup, so I don't have two screens. So if there's any questions, I'll get to them at the end because I won't be able to see while I'm sharing my screen. So let me do that right now. And can everyone see this presentation documenting in Tableau?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. It's going to be a brief presentation and then we'll get into Tableau and start documenting a workbook. I would encourage you, if you kind of want to follow along with this process with the workbook that you currently have, to open that now so you can just hop right in once we get into all these steps. So a bit about me, you can scan that QR code to link with me, view my website, Tableau Public, all of those things. And like Prasan said, I'm a Tableau and Alteryx consultant with Information Lab US. It has been such a ride, especially for someone like me. I'm actually a career changer. So I used to be a talent agent before I transitioned into data analytics, and it has been the best change of my life. I absolutely love it, and I love the community. So talking about community, I am one of the co-leads for the Data Plus Women New York City chapter. We are a hybrid TUG, so if you ever feel like attending one of our events, please feel free to follow us and connect. And then I recently just joined the Data Visualization Society early career community as an events co-lead. So if you're on the East Coast and around the New York City area, be sure to connect with me. We'll be hosting in-person events eventually, along with the Zoom events we currently run. And I have a few interests. I love reading, rock climbing, crafting, and baking. So let's get into it. So why should you document your work? Feel free to kind of throw in some answers in the chat. So the most important one, especially for me, selfishly, future you doesn't know past you. I have worked on workbooks where I am 100% certain that when I touch it in a week, I'm going to know specifically why I had to build a calculation this way or do some roundabout method to get something to appear properly. I can tell you from experience, you are not going to remember. Even though you did it, it's hard to keep track of the nuances that happen when you're building a workbook, and some of the roadblocks and the context you were building in kind of go away within that time frame. And then, as Prasan said, for project handoff, you normally won't be the only one working on a project. So you kind of want to make the other analyst's job easier so they can follow your train of thought and hopefully not break any of the work you've done. I also view it as a way to knowledge share. I think especially within large organizations where the BI teams are very large, everyone's doing a lot of interesting stuff. And if you fully document your work, someone can look at that workbook and kind of get into your mind and see how you built something and hopefully kind of translate it into their own work. And another selfish one is to record and track your work. This is a great way for you to have a running log of everything that you are doing. And also, if you're applying for jobs, it makes it a lot easier when an interviewer is asking, so what is happening in this workbook? What are you showing? Because you have that running log of what you were doing at that time. And of course, these are just some of the reasons I think documentation is really important, but the list can go on. So I'm going to be working off this checklist today. So this is my documentation checklist. And this is essentially all the things you can use in Tableau to fully document within your Tableau workbook. There's a lot of other great resources that can translate all of this into outside documentation, which I will mention at the end of this session. So the first one we're going to touch on is naming fields. The next will be commenting calculated fields. After that, we'll go into commenting dimensions and measures, how you can color code your sheets, using folders. I feel like this is very underutilized, but using folders, captioning a worksheet, and then the last one will be sheet descriptions. So I believe that's the end. Yep, great. And I'll share these slides. The slides kind of break down all of these steps so you can have kind of a document that shows you how to do any of these steps should you forget. I'm going to bring us into Tableau. And that is sharing, right? Okay. So this is, let's say, theoretical situation. This is a workbook that I was handed, and the team has some suggestions for some changes. And I am now, the other analyst left, I am now responsible for this workbook, and I have to do this in, let's say, by the end of the week. So let's just go into a sheet and see what we're working with. Okay, so if I want to quickly look up the calculations, you could just do C:, and that's going to bring up all the calculations. And so this brings us to the first thing. And Ojo was doing a great job of this because he was actually changing all the names in all of these calculations and naming the parameters. Exactly what you should do, because when you open up a Tableau workbook, and I have opened up Tableau workbooks that just show calculation and the number, it is impossible for me, never touching this workbook, to know what is happening in these calculations and what they mean. So I will have to, as the analyst, go in, see everything, see what's happening in everything, and kind of go through this process. And then probably for myself, I would go in and change all of these. So let's do that. So the first one is naming fields. You're just going to click on the calculation and hit edit. And we're going to name this, and I'm just going to name this month because that is what is happening here. So this is one of the simplest and I think the base level of the process of starting to document your work. And we're going to take this a step further, and we are going to also comment our work within the actual calculation. And so I find this really helpful. There are some times where you're doing really long conditional statements or a super complicated like LOD where there's a fixed and it's wrapped in a conditional, and unless you built it, you probably would have to spend a lot of time going through each part of it to fully understand what the calculation is doing. I think it's helpful to always leave a note within the calculated field. And so you could do that again by just getting into that calculation, clicking edit field, and you can use both // or /*//. And so I normally like to use the // for lines of text. So if it's just something like that, and the /*/ for longer explanation. So anything that might be a paragraph or something that's extremely wordy that you don't want to keep doing the // for every line break. Just going to delete this. I have it already here just so we don't waste time copying, typing. So as you can see here at the first line, I have current month for tickets. And then for the /*, I go into what this calculation is doing, where it's truncating the specified date by the specified date per month of the created date, and then I'm wrapping it in a date because I don't want it to be a date time field. So now the analyst that comes in will know why I wrap that calculation in a date, because there's situations where that might not be necessary, but for what I am doing, that is what is needed. Great, so we're just going to click OK for that one. And so the next thing on our checklist was commenting dimensions and measures. So I'm just going to X out of that. And so if I hover over each of these fields, you see no pop-up until we get to measure names. And this little box that pops up right here for measure names, it says a generated field containing the names of each measure used with measure values to blend measures. So this tells me what the field is doing without me having to even go in and see specifically what's happening within it. So I really like to do this, especially when you have sprawling calculations, as a quick way to kind of reference what is going on. And so that could be done by just right-clicking into a field. I'm just going to go into calculation 4, going down to default properties and clicking comment. And so now you're going to see this edit comment box come up. And we're just going to add this in here. And this is just saying this calculation is selected month parameter equal to current month, kind of driving that parameter in some action. So now when I hover over calculation 4, we see that little snapshot. So I think it's really useful to do this, especially when workbooks kind of get sprawling. And another thing that doesn't go along with documentation, but I also think is underutilized within the default properties part of a calculation. Let me just go to one that will be able to. You'll see that you have these other fields, default property. And another really useful thing is you have this drop down here which says number format. And I really like to do this when especially calculations, are percentages and they're a decimal point, instead of having to change it within each individual sheet, you could actually just hit percentage and change it to how you want it to be viewed. And this is going to be applied to that specific field. So you don't have to manually change it to kind of be uniform across your entire dashboard, which can save you a lot of time. And so that now brings us to color coding our sheets. Normally, when you are building a dashboard in a business setting, you're normally probably building more than just one dashboard in one workbook. And it can get confusing where sheets belong or how actions are being triggered. So what I like to do is specifically go in, right click, hit color, and just go in and just color a few sheets. And so with that, I'm just going to go into here, okay, we have issues category. And I'm going to go into our dashboard. And I'm going to show you what those colors look like. Let me just color one more. Okay, so we have a filter here, and I'm just going to bring this filter into view. And so we can see here we have issues categories, but maybe I don't want this filter to be applied across the entire sheet. So I'm going to go into dashboard. Oh, wait. I'm going to go into the actual filter. I'm going to hit the down caret where it says more options. And now we have this option apply to worksheets. And you see we have all these other options, but again, I said we don't want this filter to be applied across the entire worksheet. So I'm going to click selected worksheets. And now you can see I could easily see which worksheets are grouped together. So I'm just going to click all of these teal colored ones and skip the purple ones. And so now when I do this, you see the sheets that were within that teal group are the only ones that are actually being filtered by these options. So it helps to build out a lot of interactivity, but also helps you track specifically how you want your filters or actions to work and make sure they're all going into the proper places. Okay, let's go into one of these. So the next one I want to bring up is actually using folders. Folders are really great when you're working with large data sources. So a lot of times the worksheets or a lot of times the data I'm working with have probably 50 plus fields within the data source, and that can be really overwhelming, especially when you're just first getting started with the data and you're not familiar with all the fields and how they're related. I really like to group everything in folders, so it takes a load off of me and makes it a lot easier to kind of work through these fields and work through the workbook. I think folders are a little tricky sometimes to establish because you have to remember that you have to click this down arrow and group by folders. So now you see this change to folders, and I can go into, let's say, requester name here. And now you'll see we have folders and we can create this folder. So I'm just going to put this as requester info. And now you see we have this folder here. I just want to add another one. So I'm going to left click folders, and I could add to the folder or I can create a new folder. So I'm just going to add that to this folder. And I really like that you're able to just kind of close the fields when you don't need them. And you can add as many folders as you want, but let's say maybe you don't want the folders anymore. You don't have to go in and manually remove all of those folders. You just hit the caret again and go into group by data source table, and that's going to remove the folders, but we want back to the folders and it's back there. So unless you actually remove the folder, they will still be there while you switch between those two views. Okay, and so the second to last thing I want to mention about documenting your Tableau workbooks is actually using the captions within worksheets. And one reason I actually really like and kind of emphasize using this within documentation is because the captions actually help with user accessibility. So if someone you have on your team has to rely on a screen reader to receive this information, the screen reader will actually read what's in the caption. So it's one, helping you track your work and document your work, but it's also making your dashboard accessible at the same time, which is really beneficial overall and something I think we should all strive for, especially as we keep working and progressing within workbooks. So to get the captions into view, we're just going to go into worksheet, click that open, and show caption. And so actually Tableau always has something within the caption, and it's essentially just kind of having the fields that are in view and a brief description of where everything is. I kind of just like to write my own thing that paints the whole picture of what's actually going on. So I'm just gonna go back into here. Oh, excuse me. Gonna go back, gonna click into here. I'm gonna remove this. And then we're gonna paste this. And this is essentially a description of what's happening in the chart. So this chart is broken down by owner, group, on rows, and then an icon next to the issue category shows whether the percent difference is greater than or less than 0 from the previous month. And following the icons are bar charts showing the total count of tickets received. So I like to be that descriptive because it's very easy to break dashboards when you first get them. So at least this paints a picture of what's in the view, and should I accidentally remove something that breaks the worksheet, I can go in, read what it is showing, and try to rebuild from there. So it definitely gives you that extra security of protecting the workbook and what is being shown and why it's being shown. Okay, and I'm going to click OK. And the last thing I want to mention specifically within Tableau for documentation, it's one of my favorite because if you're working in larger organizations, you're normally not just keeping documentation within the Tableau workbook. You're also probably using another software that everyone from the team can view and describe specifically what workbooks are doing, and that is sheet descriptions. So sheet descriptions can be retrieved by, if you're on a Windows computer, hitting Control E, and you're going to get the sheet description. If you're using a Mac, that's going to be Command E, I believe, and it should also pop up this sheet description here. And like I was saying before, this goes into the specifics of what's actually happening within this sheet. So it gives you that quick description. This is actually what was also in the caption, but then it also tells you what the marks are, what's in the shelves, the icons that are being used, the dimensions, all the measures. Like, it actually breaks down all of the calculations that are within this workbook, which parameters are being used, and also the data source details. So this kind of gives you everything that's actually happening here. So it kind of makes your life a lot easier. Instead of you having to manually type that, I just like to copy it, move it into the system that we're using, and just add my own flair to it, make it a little more readable for a user. But this is kind of the base and jumping off point for how that documentation can be pushed further from all of that. And so those are kind of all the things within a worksheet to document. This can go a lot further to like how do you actually document the actual dashboard, your sheets, all of that, but we will not be getting into that today. I'm going to hop back into the presentation. I'm just going to click through really quick. Okay, and so additional resource, and I think Scott's on the call with us, so I'm sure he'll say you could reach out to him if you would like to know more about Rapid Docs, but in his own words, essentially, this is a tool that reads the metadata of a Tableau workbook file and spits out documentation on data sources, calculated fields, tables and fields, parameters, dashboards, and worksheets. And I believe he mentioned this kind of has automated 85% of his documentation process. So if you're interested in learning more, sorry, Scott, I'm volunteering you, please feel free to reach out to him. I'm sure he'd be more than happy to tell you more about this. I think this is probably a more advanced and business use case. And I think if you're just starting out with Tableau, kind of learning how to document well your own worksheets is a really great place to start. And then just a documenting exercise that you can kind of do in your own time. I would encourage you to open up an old workbook and see if you're able to kind of decode your work. And I want you to time how long it takes you to understand your own work. And then the next step would be to create a new workbook, fully document it with the checklist that's provided within this slideshow, and then revisit it in 2 weeks and see how long does that take you to kind of read through it, understand it, kind of get everything you need to work with the workbook again, and then just reflect on the difference. I think there's always a love-hate with documentation because it does take a lot more time to document your work, but I also think it kind of saves so much time in the future that taking that extra 5-10 minutes to document a worksheet while you're working on it will pay off in dividends. And the last thing I want to say is just thank you all for having me listening to this. I know it's not the most glamorous topic in Tableau, but I think it's very essential to keep businesses running and to keep you sane as well.
Thank you so much, Tabitha. That was a great session, and all the small pointers. Like as I said, it might not be glamorous enough, but I think it's one of the most important thing to be done, because like once you get into the habit of doing this, the first thing that you always think about it, how do I structure my workbook in a way so that it's easy enough to follow through. So I think that's great. Also, like thank you for that particular pointer on that, like whatever text you have in captions, that is something that screen reader reads. I didn't know that. I was kind of like I knew that captions are there for just putting on information, so that but that was a great point I didn't know. So thank you for sharing so many points, and we have some questions for you. So okay. So there's one question that's a bit funny as well, but so when you're commenting, do you identify yourself? Like, do you put a name or date as well that, okay, you did this on this day? Do you think that's something to be done?
So I have done both. I think it's helpful, especially if you know within a BI team or you're going on vacation and things are changing, to have that level of information. Because then they know who to track down if something changes or you leave departments. Like someone could just like send you a Teams message like, hey, I saw you did this in this workbook. Can we just touch base about this? So I do actually normally, if I'm working in a team environment, I will actually put my initials next to every calculation. So then people know specifically that I was working on it. So I think it is helpful, but it does add an extra step. So this is kind of your choose your own adventure and find what works for you, and then just kind of run with it.
Also, people can track you then.
Yeah, that's also true. Maybe you don't want them to find you, which is also a possibility because sometimes I build crazy workbooks and I'm like, I feel sorry for whoever gets this because the calculations are enormous and doing something crazy. So maybe you don't want to be found. So think about that too.
Yeah, that's a great point. Okay, so we have another question. So, are you familiar with a tool called Rapidox?
So Scott Eaton actually, when I first started posting about documentation, reshared it and was like, I use this tool. It's kind of like streamlined 85%
Mhm.
of my process, which is really great. I haven't personally used it. I haven't had a use case to actually play with it yet, but he has definitely sang its praises. And I would, if anyone's interested in hearing more about that, I'm sure he'd be happy to share.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's a good tool, but sometimes I think with company policies as well, getting an external tool to do these things can be a bit tough. So yeah,
Yeah.
but altogether, like putting all these principles in your workbook always helps. And there's a very common question, but I would like to know your perspective. So Tom has asked this question. So do you hide the sheets in your dashboards?
I do, but it's because it gives me so much anxiety when I have all of them open, and I already have built a dashboard. While I'm build like, yeah, I I do it, and then it's easy to unhide them. That's why I
Hmm.
do it. Some people don't, but normally when you're working with one data source, one dashboard normally doesn't answer all the questions. You're normally doing an executive level and then a more granular level and then probably a more granular level. And that could end you with probably 60 sheets
Hmm.
overall. So, yeah, I choose to hide them, but I will color code where they belong to which dashboards. So, while they're not unhidden, I can track this belongs here and this is here.
Yeah, yeah. That the color coding actually helps, and grouping them, like I can say I don't do that, but yes, that's a great point to be done. And one of the things I felt like if you have some sheets, right, that you're not going to use in dashboard, but you're using that in tooltips, and then somebody hides it, and you don't know where to find it. Now, so
That does happen. Normally, if I open a workbook and I just see the dashboards, I immediately go into that dashboard. I'm like, unhide all sheets. And then I'll like go through it, be a detective there. But yeah,
Mhm.
I see both sides.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so I think we are done with questions. And thank you again for bringing both of you these great topics. It was really insightful as well as like a lot of great points. I can also see like people were like bombing with conversations. That's always good to see. So okay, thank you so much for giving your time on Friday. So it's almost, I think, it's morning. You still have work to do. Yeah. Oh,
Still have half a
poor,
day.
poor souls. It's almost night for us. Okay, so guys, if anybody, if you haven't subscribed or joined our WhatsApp group, I'm going to just share it for a while, and yeah, that's all. If feel free to jump off, and see you next month with another great set of speakers.
So
Thank you
while
so much.
Prasanna is sharing that, here's my dad joke. So when an ant goes to a different country, what does it become?
Okay.
It becomes import ant.
Okay.
Speechless.
All right. Well, I brain fudge
I'm gonna
you.
save that one.
Thank you so much, Prasan and team, for the opportunity. Data fam, have a fantastic weekend. Bye.
Yeah, I'm just stopping the recording.